17. If you've not had the pleasure of being at a meeting before, a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, if you silence your cell phones, we'd greatly appreciate it. Second of all, the way the meetings work is after the roll call and approval of the minutes from the last meeting, city staff presents on each item. Once they're done with their presentation, it's open up just to the commission for technical questions. Once we're done with technical questions, we open it up to the audience. If you have anything to say, please step up to the microphone, state your name and address so we have that for the record. Once everybody's had a chance to speak, it comes back to the commission for discussion and usually a vote. And with that, let us call the roll.
Kathleen Pratt.
Here.
David Borsick.
Present.
Ed Bowen.
Here.
Steve Cummings. Michael Ford. John Hintz.
Here.
John Kiefer. Robert Weigert.
Here.
Thomas Perry.
Here.
Andrew Mott.
Here.
Thomas Wojtek.
Here. Moving on to approval of the minutes from July 17th. Do you have any corrections, anything else regarding the minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion clearly passes. Let us move on to item number 1. Accept lintel easement at 234 Church Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure thing.
Actually, this one, there was a typo in the title. It is actually a historic marker easement. I think I had forgotten to update the title from the previous staff report that we submitted for an easement.
Just for the
one of
record,
these.
what's a lintel?
A lintel, you'll often see it, it's meant to support brick a lot of times.
got it.
So it's an architectural element. It could be stone or concrete. But anyway, so this is a historic marker easement for 234 Church Avenue at the historic Morgan House. So you can see the site right there in blue. It's right across from City Hall and the safety building. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to install a double-sided bronze 24 by 36 historic sign marker on the site. It'll be pole mounted there. You can see the easement there in sort of yellowish orange there. The sign would be set back probably 6 to 8 feet from the sidewalk. That easement there is meant to be to allow us to get access to that marker to install it. And then if we ever need to do service or maintain it, remove it for any reason, we can get at it. The idea is that you'd be able to read information on the Morgan House and on the Irving Church Historic District there. So as you're going up the main walk, you'd see this marker that's placed on a pole. Or if you're coming from the Morgan House, you'd see from the other direction. Again, another this map here that Jeff put together, showing the location of the easement in relation to the lot lines there. And this was submitted with the easement documents. And staff does not see any concerns with this proposed easement. Like I said, it'll be a bronze two-sided historic marker with text. We think it'll enhance the property, the visual aesthetics of it, and provide some information, you know, keeping the historic legacy alive. So we recommend approval of this proposed easement as we proposed in the staff report here.
Thank you. Technical questions, David.
I think what's missing here is what does it look like?
Sure, and actually I thought about that just before this meeting. It'll have, if you think about, and I know pictures would do it better justice, but if you think about some of the roadside markers that you'll see that you can stop by and there's paragraphs of text on them, that's what this would be.
Yeah, I understand that, but
Sure.
I'm having trouble understanding a pole and a, you know, that would have been helpful just to visualize
Sure.
what
And it'd probably be about 3.5 to 4 feet off the ground, mounted on that pole, and probably extend up to like 6 to 8 feet.
Okay, that part of it meets the height, and that would meet.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
And it's not in the vision triangle. We made sure of that.
You know, in the future, though, if something like this, we would ask for other signs to have,
Sure.
have at least some kind of a rendering. I understand the text may not be there, but at least an idea of what we're looking at.
Yep.
Other technical questions? Seeing not anyone here from the audience to speak to this item today? Okay, back to the commission.
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor, oh, pardon me. Call the roll.
Hintz.
Aye.
We had consent
Weigert.
agenda.
Aye.
Perry.
Aye.
Mott.
Aye.
Pratt.
Aye.
Borsick.
Aye.
Bowen.
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Moving on to item number 2, General Development Plan and Specific Implementation Plan Amendment for property located at 2351 West Town Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the applicant is requesting approval of a GDP and SIP amendment for a new warehouse building and storage area addition. So this is for the Menards site on Westtown Ave. The site and the surrounding area is predominantly commercial, and with a multifamily use to the south. Here's an aerial view of the site. To the south and to the east, there's outdoor storage area along with an existing storage building. And then there's also, within an overhang, there's some storage area as well. So here's a closer view of where the proposed storage building will be going. There's an existing storage rack that will be constructed around. And here's the site plan. So you can see here's the storage building. It will be on over existing pavement. Also under to enclose this overhang area, there will be steel walls put up because they want to have a controlled or environment controlled storage area. So here's the elevations for the new storage building. The warehouse building will be very similar to the existing warehouse that's on the east side of the storage yard. It will use the same green and white steel panels that are used on the existing storage building, as well as portions of the store facades. Green steel panels will also be used for the new walls for the storage yard enclosure, so that's going around that overhang to fully enclose it on the rear south facade and on the east side facade. Staff does not have concerns with the exteriors of the additions as they are consistent with the existing building facades. And as for the site design, no setbacks are changing as they're using existing storage area. And staff recommends approval of the GDP and SIP amendment with the findings listed in your staff reports.
All right, thank you. Technical questions from anybody? All right, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Going once? Twice? Okay, back to the commission.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, call the roll, please.
Hintz,
Aye.
Weigert,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Prop,
Aye.
Borsick,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
On to item number 3, conditional use permit request to establish an outdoor storage use at 3300 Medalist Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.
The applicant is requesting a CUP to expand an existing outdoor storage use. So the site is located at the corner of Medalist Drive and West 33rd Ave. It is an industrial site surrounded predominantly by industrial uses. So here's an aerial view of the site. The subject area is an existing storage area for Oshkosh Defense. They're using it for storage of vehicles, and they're proposing to expand it. Earlier this summer, there was a CUP approved for an outdoor storage area for storage of vehicles in front of the building along West 33rd Ave. And again, now they're proposing to expand it on both sides of the storage area in the southeast corner of the building. So here's a closer view of the storage area. So the existing area is about 12,350 square feet, and it is surrounded by cyclone fencing. And the applicant is planning to expand on both the east and west sides. And the new storage area will be surfaced with gravel and enclosed with 6-foot-tall cyclone fencing. However, the proposed fencing is not compliant with screening standards. They would need to do 8-foot-tall solid fencing. Also, a cross-access agreement will be required as the proposed expansion of the storage area goes over the property line. And here's the proposed cyclone fencing, and again, this is not code compliant for screening, so it will have to be 8-foot-tall solid fencing. Also, Public Works reviewed the proposal, and they noted that the existing stormwater management plan will have to be modified, and a cross-access agreement will be required for stormwater to cross over to the adjacent parcel, and that can be addressed during site plan review. And staff recommends approval of the proposed CUP for an outdoor storage area at 3300 Medalist Drive as proposed, with the findings in your staff report and the following conditions. The outdoor storage area must be completely enclosed by 8-foot-tall solid fencing, and a cross-access agreement must be drafted and submitted to the Department of Community Development.
All right, thank you, sir. Technical questions, David?
Any reason that the storage area isn't required to be paved?
We do not
Hers-
require pavement of outdoor storage lots, only parking lots,
What's going in there?
storage of vehicles.
Okay, it's a duck. It's still vehicles. Vehicles are,
Code
it's-
requirement for storage does not
Right.
traditionally
We
require.
discussed this
pavement.
during the zoning ordinance update, didn't get.
Other technical questions? Go ahead, Kath.
This is lapping over the lot line. Oshkosh Corp is leasing this property. So I'm presuming it's okay with the property owner that they,
And that's reasoning for that cross-access agreement too, is they're agreeing to allow them to build over that property line.
okay.
All right. Other technical questions? Ed?
There's no, are there, and maybe this is the district, there's no setbacks along that property line? I mean, if we're, I guess, wouldn't we be, or I guess if they're not paving, I suppose that there wouldn't be anything that needs to be set back. I mean, wouldn't,
common ownership though, isn't it?
or is it common, I don't know.
So the fact that it already is access across that line, we view it as basically treating it as a common ownership, or a single parcel use.
Okay.
So they are expanding the fence line over it, but they're already occupying kind of that space.
They're not expanding the use, so you're not
If it was
requiring
really
a,
change to how that current property line is being impacted.
okay.
And in fact, it is more of a, I don't want to say it's a temporary use, but it's a use that can easily be removed in the future if need be.
Okay.
All right, other technical questions? Okay, seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
Good afternoon, I'm Rick Fisher with Fisher and Associates Architects, and I'm working with the owners of the building to help Oshkosh Truck, or Oshkosh Defense, accommodate their proposed storage. Both parcels are owned by the same entity and developed them for and leasing spaces to Oshkosh Defense.
Do you have any issues with the conditions?
I don't think so, no.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Seeing none, back to the commission.
Motion to approve.
Second?
All right. Discussion? All right. Call the roll, please.
Hintz,
Aye.
Weigert,
Aye.
Harry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Borsick,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
All right, item number 4, approval of a specific implementation plan amendment for signage for property located at 1863 Jackson Street, McDonald's.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for item number 4, there is some background on this. I think it came before all of you last year, August 15th, 2017, originally as a GDP and an SIP for site and restaurant renovations here for the McDonald's on Jackson Street there. Signage was not originally included in the original SIP, so they are coming back to us today seeking approval of their sign package. They submitted a pretty comprehensive sign package for the site. They want to bring the site more in line with current corporate standards for McDonald's signage. You can see the subject site up there. There's a number of mixed uses around the site. So here, you know, the church over here to the west, institutionally zoned. There's some vacant land to the south, some retail and automotive sales to the north and east. And you can see the aerial. So the McDonald's being located here, they had acquired some land from the church, and they're been in progress in terms of expanding their drive-through there. This is an older, obviously, aerial here, but most of the parking is on the north of the site with a little bit to the south and then the restaurant on the southern half of the site. Here is a site plan in terms of the proposed signage. So you can see they've got a number of things going on here. On the north along Grunwald here, they have some directional signage, enter and exit signage, kind of denoting where the drive is. And what they're looking to do is they expanded the drive-through here to 2 lanes, or side by side, I should say. And what they want to do is add some pre-sell boards and some menu boards. And so they want to break down the ordering process into a series of steps where you stop at each station, so to speak. Another element of it occurs, and they want to expedite and reduce queuing, expedite the process, make it more efficient for customers. I'll show you some of the signage in a minute, but just going through the placement here, here would be an overhead canopy to kind of discourage bigger, taller vehicles from going through the drive-through lanes. Pre-sell boards, 1 for each drive-through lane. Overhead canopies here to protect customers and kind of cover them from the elements. Menu boards here for each drive-through lane. And then they're proposing some on-building signage, which you'll see in a minute. All of that appears to meet our basic standards for on-building signage. And then over here, pull forward signage, and then some reserved parking spaces for customers waiting for their orders. Here's some of the on-building signage that they're proposing. So up here on the main elevation, they're proposing to replace the previous signage with new 24-inch word mark signage here, more in line with their modern standards. And then over here on the north, the non-drive-through elevation, you can see they want to do a 42-inch wall arch there. So not a whole lot on this elevation, but right there you can see that. And then on the drive-through elevation, above each window, they have a pay here sign for the first one, and then a pickup here sign above this window. All of this signage appears to meet our area requirements. Getting into some of the signage on site that requires base standard modifications. Up here is one of their pre-sell boards. You can see it's an LED unit. It's supposed to be thinner, and combined with the menu boards, both of those would be less area, according to the applicant, than the 2 existing fluorescent menu boards. But like I said, this would be the first stop that you'd make as a customer in the drive-through. Then you'd approach these menu boards. All LED units are supposed to be thinner and more attractive. They're also supposed to comply with ADA, so the applicant says that they will help in terms of expediting the ordering, but then also expediting the process for their employees so that they don't have to go outside and physically change the content on the signs. This is an example of that order here canopy that would cover customers and include the speaker system for the ordering system there. And then the wall signage here shown there. The base standard modification be required for those signs. One, the menu boards and pre-sell boards exceed the number allowed. I believe our code considers those as daily notice signs. So that includes menu boards, pre-sell boards, any of the stuff that they want to put freestanding in the drive-through. They're typically only allowed 1 sign of that type per business with on-street frontage. They're asking for 4 of those, so the number exceeds what we allow, so they're applying for the base standard modification. The height of the order here canopies and that drive-through canopy there in the center, that exceeds the 6-foot height for on-site directional signage. We really don't address this type of sign in the ordinance explicitly, so we as staff deem this to be directional on-site signage. It requires a base standard modification. You can see that a lot of that is pretty standard for a lot of these restaurants, and so they want to bring these in line with what their corporate standards and make them more visually appealing and also functional. These here, the reserved parking signs, those are movable and they just are placed out on in the parking lot. These currently as proposed exceed our maximum height for that type of sign. They're proposed at 7 feet. We only allow up to 6 foot in height. We as staff felt that requiring them to go down to 6 feet is entirely reasonable considering what they're asking for. Here's an example here of their welcome sign that would go out at the entrance and exit on the north of the site. Currently, these do not comply with our vision triangle requirements, so these would have to move back. Going back to the site plan, you'll see they're located in the 10-foot by 10-foot vision triangle. So we think that they have adequate room to be able to bump these back. It's either that or reduce them in height to 2 feet 6 inches. I think right now they're like 4 feet tall, if I remember correctly. So staff does not have issues with the majority of what they're proposing. We recommend approval of this SIP amendment with the following conditions. The main one is the on-site directional signage on the north drive, so at Grunwald there. That must either move out of the 10-foot by 10-foot vision triangle or be reduced in height to 2 foot 6 inches, or 2 feet 6 inches, excuse me. This is a safety consideration, and the applicant appears to have room in the vicinity for locating these signs in a code-compliant manner. We want the owner and applicant to submit revised plans showing the sign in a conforming location or displaying a compliant height and receive approval from us before installing the signage. The next condition is that the owner would ensure that previously conditioned landscaping is installed in accordance with the previously submitted landscape plans. The third is the base standard modification to permit overhead drive-through canopy and the 2 order here canopies with heights in excess of the 6-foot limit permitted by the ordinance. So we recommend approval of that. We recommend approval of the base standard modification to permit 1 pre-sell board and 1 menu board for each drive-through lane. And then the pull forward signage with the proposed height of 7 feet, that would be required to comply with the 6-foot height maximum of the zoning ordinance.
All right, thank you, sir. Technical questions? Ed?
This is just sort of a general question, I guess, but it would seem like some of these, I guess some of the things that we're trying to look at here in terms of the base standard modifications is that our ordinance just doesn't contemplate some of these items, like those canopies and things like that.
Yeah. I think that's what it is that, you know, we talk about directional signage, but that's pretty open. We don't really address some of this, which is coming up, especially in recent years.
Right. And that's, I guess that's kind of where I was going with it. I know we just rewrote the zoning ordinance. But it does seem like from, you know, looking at what McDonald's is doing in new locations, looking at, you know, Chick-fil-A has a double drive-through. There's a lot of these types of new concepts that are coming out with novel forms of signage and methods of serving customers on site and things like that. It may be worth a look, I guess. If our zoning ordinance doesn't actually recognize some of these things, instead of having to come through and do base standard modifications frequently when we're going to see more projects like this, it seems to me like it could make sense for us to maybe look at calling out some of these things more specifically, so you've got the ability to approve them as a matter of course, as opposed to having to bring them through a 2-month process to get a sign approved.
I would agree with that, and I would add that just based on my own driving around, these newer signs look nicer than the older ones, even if they don't meet the...
Right, even if they're not code compliant, they do tend to look better. They're more
smaller.
They're a little bit more efficient. They don't cast as much light in different directions, things like that. So it may be worth looking at.
Well, I agree. The one thing that we need to be careful of is we got to make sure that it's going to be a trend that we see for the foreseeable future. We don't want to put all the effort into writing another code update for something that's a one-off.
No, I know. You know? And I think just from seeing some of this stuff come down the pike, I think we're going to see more of this.
Right.
John?
For condition number 5, I believe that was for reserved drive-through signage, not pull-forward signage.
Yeah, and I think...
And I just wanted to add on to that, if you've got a person parked in spot number 2 and one's open, a 6-foot limit with a Suburban or a pickup parked there, no one's gonna see the second spot, the spot that's ahead of them. I'm speaking as someone who's been a general manager in fast food. That's why I don't think that they're out of line asking for that 7 foot, because you have so many people with trucks, and they're gonna say, can you pull over to that spot right over here, and they're not gonna see where they're supposed to pull if there's a vehicle in the one that's closest to the window.
Sure.
And I think that might be something that's worth discussing, because it's all of a sudden you have confused people in a drive-through. You know how that goes.
I think the pull forward signage, I think I just referred to it as that because I know in their plans, they just kind of lumped it in as that. But yeah, it's reserved parking signage is included in there. And then the drive-through, yeah.
And that's something I'd like to hear from the petitioner, because I'm wondering if we might be able to bend on that one, because like I said, that 7 foot thing covers the vehicle sizes. It's not like they're trying to make something that's huge and you know, they're actually trying to make something that's effective, I believe.
All right. Any other technical questions? Seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? You step up to the microphone, sir, state your name and address, and tell us what you think.
I'm Chris Hughes with Nicolay Sign out of Iron River, Michigan, representing McDonald's Killian Management. And I just wanted to go over a couple things.
Please do.
Like you said, I could pass out a couple things just so people can see the before and after. It shed a little more light where you can see what we have there now, and the after is basically a different McDonald's, but it'll show a little better than what you have on the top. When you said some things enhance, especially when you look at, you're kind of calling it a canopy. The very first one is a welcome point gateway. It's so people with big trucks don't come through and knock the building down. You guys want to share that one?
We don't need 20 of them.
And that way you'll kind of see a few color photos of one of their other stores that they've just done. And the one with the building is the new stuff, and then the one with the word McDonald's is the old stuff. And you'll see, like, I'll stand up here. Or do I need to be on the microphone?
You need to be in the microphone so the TV audience can hear you.
And I know it's, you've said pretty much everything is kind of met the commission's approval, but like this is the word McDonald's that goes on the front of the building. It had one similar to that. This is LED. This is the M that goes on the side of the building. This is actually the Lemira McDonald's. This is the sign that they're asking for in that 10-foot triangle. But as one of their other stores in Ironwood, Michigan, they have a same code. So moving it isn't really a good option, but they do have the 2-foot one for cities that have the ordinance to see over. So this would be what, Stephen, what we would go for. So rather than go through whole new planning, when they did this, wherever things got missed for the sign package, now they, you know, make things like this. So this one would be the one that we would apply for permit for. It's 2 feet high by 1 foot, 1.5 feet wide, and the owners have agreed that that would be fine. This one is the Welcome Point Gateway. And in the photos of the old stuff, you'll see the Welcome Point Gateway is a red one with like a little lamp hanging with it. This is what goes before the drive-through, and they actually swing. So if someone comes through something too tall before they come around and clip the building, excuse me, or the ordering roofs. Ordering roofs. Glenn, do you have one of the ordering roofs? Oh, they are.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you can actually get a pretty good view from them.
With the Welcome Point Gateway, you'll see the 2 ordering roofs. In the older McDonald's,
With this one, you can kind of get a
yeah,
good
in
view,
the
I think.
background, they were really big yellow units. They've downsized them greatly, put an LED light in for safety. And when you're sitting there ordering and cleaning out, it's just the protection of that. We talked about ADA. McDonald's has, you know, a lot of different people that work for them, and the old menu boards, which in one of the older pictures shows the kind that you have to open the glass panels, go in there and change it, and even at lunch hour or breakfast, you have to go out and spin the thing. The new ones are basically like this, they're TV screens. So inside, it's all done on a computer, so no one has to go outside in the weather or for physically challenged people. So that's the pre-sell and then the menu board. So it makes, when you look at the drive-through, and some of the pictures here are of the Jackson Street McDonald's, you see the landscaping's all done. It's pretty beautiful. It's I think tastefully done, and this is what the drive-through will look like, you know, with the unit there. So you can talk about some of the things, just the way modernization, whether we look at the pictures hanging on the walls of beautiful old buildings, those are probably better, but some of this stuff, this becomes better. So I think the only, and I understand what you're saying about the pull ahead and the reserve signs. We don't have an issue with keeping them a little lower, but it makes sense with the SUVs and vans. And in the time that they're standing, because, you know, people knock them over, half the time they're tipped over, so, but if they're 8 feet, 7 feet, 6 feet, whatever the city determines on that, those are not real critical. The other signs that hang on the south side, it's just above the window that'll say, pay here and pick up here. Those are just little things that hang off the building. So the main signage is the McDonald's on the front of the building, the M, the 2 driveway signs on the north side. There is none on the east side facing Jackson Street, so it's only those 2 signs. And to replace those with the 2x2 would be no problem. So it looks like in the letter that I received, most everything has been slated for approval, but if there's any questions, myself, you know, Steve Killian Jr., the owner of the store, and Sherry Peterson, their construction coordinator, and my foreman Glenn Barth here as well.
Okay, do we have any questions for the petitioner? I think you've answered a lot of them. But... All right, thank you, sir.
And from what I understand, this goes to this, if it gets approved, then you go to one more council meeting, then we can apply for the permit.
Yep.
Right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Next Tuesday.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today?
Wednesday, next Wednesday.
Wednesday.
All right, back to the commission.
Move approval?
Second.
With conditions.
It's been moved, I think we
My
had.
apologies.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Hintz,
Aye.
Weigert,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Borsick,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Right, item number 5, specific implementation plan amendment for signage modification for Verve Credit Union located at the 1000 block of North Washburn Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we heard this item approximately a month or so ago at a workshop. The developers of the Verve Credit Union over there came to us to discuss a couple of potential sign changes that they'd like to do. They have since followed up with the plan development amendment for that signage. So here's the site. It's kind of located at that southwest corner of North Washburn. This is the multi-building development that's taking place there. It's got the 2-unit development on the east side, an additional building in the future on the east side, and the Verve on the north side. So it's a relatively commercially zoned parcel. Here's the aerial. This is obviously taken prior to the construction of the multi-tenant building that's already up and running. So here's those Verve elevations that we looked at last time. Applicants proposing 2 types of signage. The first is flat wall building signage on the south elevation and the north elevation. The north elevation is a little different than we traditionally see because it actually hangs inside the building and then is visible through the glass. And then they are proposing 2 signs that sit on top of canopies on the east and west sides of the building. You can kind of see them here. As previously discussed, these signs meet the exact strict definition of what is a roof sign, therefore are not permitted. As we discussed during the workshop, although they meet that exact definition of a roof sign, they're really not functioning as the intent of why we prohibit roof signs. They're not extending above that top parapet of the main wall. They just happen to sit on top of some canopy roofs. So they're asking a base standard modification to be allowed roof signage for this specific type of roof signage. Staff is in support of that because, as we kind of discussed, it's not traditional roof signage for the reason we prohibit roof signage. This is functioning really the same as a wall sign. It's just pushed out a little bit because they have those larger canopies. Second, they are asking for a base standard modification for the size of this north building elevation sign. In its entirety, the building is under the cap for wall signage. But based on a very narrow linear building they were forced to do on this site because of a pipeline easement running through, the building is narrower than would be traditionally done. They're requesting a base standard modification to make this size of the sign more traditionally sized with what they would do at other locations. Code allows a 1-to-1 ratio of 1 square foot of linear wall per 1 square foot of signage. This sign is approximately 64 square feet, and they only have about 30 to 33 feet of building. Now, when you look at the building massing in its entirety, if you include the canopy, they're at about 50 feet. So if you kind of take that expanded, what you see from the road, it's still slightly oversized, but it's more in what you would see for traditional sizing of these signs. So here are then the small canopy signs on the roofs that they're proposing. And again, those are, they're only 8 square feet, so they're very small in terms of signage. Here's kind of some renderings so you can see how this sign is inside the building and views out to the main roadway. And then you can see kind of the canopy signage there as well. So staff is recommending approval subject to a couple of conditions. First, the base standard modification to allow those roof signs as specifically proposed for this instance. Building wall signage to be capped at 112 square feet. The reason that staff is recommending that be placed is they're using the justification for the larger front elevation sign as they are under the overall signage. They're reducing their other signage in lieu of requesting the larger signage. Staff feels if that is their justification for it, we should hold them to that and cap that at 112 square feet. And then finally, the base standard modification to allow 64 square feet of signage on the north building elevation.
All right, thank you. Technical question. Seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item today? Seeing none of that, back to the commission.
Motion approved with recommendations.
Second. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's call the roll one more time.
Hintz,
Aye.
Weigert,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Prop,
Aye.
Forsick,
Aye.
Bowen,
Present.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0-1.
All right, moving on, item number 6, a zone change from institutional to institutional with plan development overlay and approval of a general development plan and specific implementation plan for property located at 1331 High Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is kind of a multi-part request. So this is the existing home of River Valley Church, located at the southwest corner of Congress and High. The church sits at the very northern portion of the site and the parking lot to the south. As you can see, there's a kind of variety of zoning district and uses in the area. There's a significant amount of institutional land use going on. Then we have some multifamily to the west, and then kind of a mixture of 2 and multifamily uses to the south. To the north, across the street, you kind of have a large green space and a park. So here's an area of the site. You can see we do have the institutional land use over east across the street. We have these multifamily units to the west, and then a mixture of kind of 2 and multifamily structures south of them. So the church owns the entire parcel, which includes a previous single-family home on the southern portion of the site. For this project, the applicant is proposing removal of that single-family home and expansion of their parking lots. So the current parking lot is legal non-conforming for a variety of uses and variety of reasons, setbacks and impervious surface being the main 2. So the applicant would like to extend that parking lot south and maintain the existing setback lines for the church. So they need a couple of base standards in order to do that. The first would be along the the right side property line. They want to reduce the required front yard setback to 4.4 feet 4 inches along High Avenue. That basically will allow them to line that up with their existing setback. Same thing on then we'll call it the west or left setback. They want to reduce that to 7 feet 6 inches again, so they can line up the existing parking lot, so you don't have kind of this narrowing and constricting movement of the parking lot. Also allows them to get the parking lot up to size appropriately. The current building is well under parked per code requirements. The original church parking lot was constructed in 2003 with about 53 spaces. Based on the size of the worship area, they would be required under today's code 91. So significantly underparked, causing a lot of on-street parking in the area. By allowing them to do this increase, it'd bring them up to about 92 spaces, so just over, 93 spaces, just over that minimum requirement. It should really help alleviate some of the on-site concerns, or on-street parking concerns. They're also proposing to make some modifications to the drive aisles. If we go back to the aerial, you can see there's an existing drive entrance up towards the corner here, a middle entrance, and a residential curb cut. Applicant is proposing to close this intersection, which both staff and Department of Public Works are in favor of. This intersection is considerably closer, or that driveway is considerably closer to the intersection than we'd like to see. There is some traffic concerns with its current location. So by removing this, we are actually going to be improving the site, improving circulation in the area. They then are proposing to close this current residential drive and shift it a little bit south. So if we go back to plans, we can see here, closure of this drive. The current residential drive is kind of in here, and they're going to shift it south a little bit so you can have better access through the site. They will need a base standard modification for impervious surface. Current impervious surface is at about 72% with the addition of this parking lot. Current code requirement is only 60%. Again, by adding this parking and alleviating kind of the on-street parking concern in the area, staff does feel it's appropriate in this instance to exceed that maximum impervious surface. So staff is recommending approval of the zone change, so we are putting that zone change PD in place so we can request some of these base standard modifications to meet the needs of the owner. And then approval of the general development plan and specific implementation plan. First, that a final site lighting plan be provided to meet the minimum 4-foot candle in the parking areas. The present photometric plan that's been submitted, there are a couple places where it falls under our .4 requirement for parking areas. We just want to make sure that parking area is adequately lit for any early morning or nighttime users of the parking lot. We are recommending the northernmost curb cut and the residential curb cut be removed and replaced to city standards. Base standard modification to allow 72% impervious surface. Base standard modification to reduce the setback along High Avenue to 4 feet 4 inches to meet the existing line of that parking. Base standard for the rear setback down to 7.6, again, to meet that rear parking. They are requesting a base standard modification to not do curb and gutter for the new parking area. Their current parking area does not have curb and gutter and basically uses elevation and sheet flow for their stormwater management requirements. So they've been in discussions with Public Works about keeping kind of that same system for the new parking area. Only comment we would have that if this parking lot in the future would need to be fully reconstructed, we would make them at that time bring the entire site up to those curb and gutter requirements. But at this time, we have no concern with maintaining that same situation, using that same drainage plan as they presently have. We are requesting, because we're doing some base standards here and we're building the site over what you would traditionally see in this district, staff feels it's appropriate to do some, going the wrong way here, do some other kind of enhancement of the site. If we are having a largely now impervious site, staff feels this is the opportunity to maybe increase the green space and the landscaping on other portions of the site that are deficient for current code requirements. So staff is recommending 100 landscaping points be required along the north property line of the intersection of Congress and High Avenue, an additional 50 points of landscaping required along the east property line. So if I can go back to the aerial here. So right now in the northern portion and the eastern portion of the site, there's very minimal landscaping. Staff's opinion, by reducing all of the green space that is presently around this site, we'd like to see this enhanced. This is kind of that start of that gateway that heads into the downtown University corridor area. We feel it's appropriate to then enhance that element as a kind of in lieu of the current green space. So we're just asking that a little bit more landscaping be placed along the north and then in this strip along kind of the east side of the building. Staff feels it's a fair trade-off in this instance. And then finally, that the final landscaping should be approved by the Department of Community Development.
All right, thank you. Technical questions, David?
Two, is not the area along the apartments on the left-hand side, is that transitional?
So there is a buffer yard requirement. They have a 6-foot-high wood fence which meets their buffer yard requirement. So there's currently a 6-foot-high fence that runs along the existing portion of the property line. Their plan to meet their buffer yard requirement is to continue that 6-foot wood fence.
Okay. And then secondly, there was the stormwater management.
Yep.
What do they propose?
There is and it's not on this document, there is some stormwater management taking place kind of on the south side of this property. And the applicant can talk about a little more. They're not, I believe they're not exceeding the 20,000 square foot threshold, so there's not a ton that needs to be done. Final drainage plans will have to be required during their site plan review.
Will it take care of all the impervious surface?
They only have to address the new portion under the code.
So, but if everything is sheeted that way, if I understood what you said, how is it going, isn't it going to overload the?
We'll kind of, when the applicant comes up, we'll address that to him. And I know Steve is here.
Anything else, David?
Well, that's it.
Any other technical questions? Ed?
The additional 150 landscape points,
Yes.
those are in addition, those are just on the existing property. The new property will meet.
The new property meets code requirements
Meets
for
it on
its
its own with
landscaping.
the 172 that you mentioned there?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, other technical questions? Seeing none, anyone here from the public to speak to this item? Up, sir. Welcome back.
Good afternoon, I'm Rick Fisher with Fisher & Associates Architects. I'm the architect for the project, and I can answer questions regarding the site design.
Stormwater is a question.
Okay. The disturbed area on the site for this, this project is less than 20,000 square feet. So what we're planning to do is add an additional catch basin in the new paved area that's directed to the existing storm sewer system. We had originally proposed to tie back to the street with a new tap, and the city preferred that we direct it through the current system. We're working with Dable Engineering to provide our stormwater design and confirm that the pipe is sized, and I believe it is.
You have some existing structures in this part of the parking
Yeah,
lot,
there's one structure about where your cursor is now, and we would extend that line to the southeast.
to catch.
Yep, into the new paved area with an additional basin.
Follow-up, what is the release rate going to be? I understand you're not going to have treatment if you're going to go right into, but what is the release rate going to be?
I do not know what the rate is.
But you're working with the city.
Because I'm going to come back with a relation, that at least the release rate be what the city's release rate is for if they were doing a stormwater. And I think it's a 100-year storm event, 10-year release rate or something to that effect.
We can ask if Steve probably answer that very quickly for us.
If the site was triggering the codes, it would be the 100-year pulse.
Okay. Would you have a problem meeting that? Would they have a problem?
Yes.
In what regards?
Are you talking just for the additional area or the entire site?
Entire site.
They would have to build a stormwater detention base somewhere on the site then in order to do.
Couldn't they put a restrictor pipe in there?
It would likely flood their parking lot then and probably would run toward the abutting property to the south.
Because it's not unusual to have parking lots hold excess and then in lieu of putting.
It is a practice that is not followed anymore. It was a common practice 10 to 15 years ago, but using parking lots for detention is not a good practice that it's been discouraged.
So, okay, so what they're doing and what concerns me is that that it's, we're putting more impervious surface in, even if it falls below the 20,000, and we're not we're increasing the stormwater runoff in that area.
True, and helping out here, I do believe there was a house on the property previously, so the increase in impervious isn't dramatic on this particular site. But it is an increase nonetheless.
Yeah, there had been a house with a driveway, a back patio area, attached garage. So and the surface water of that was draining, wherever it found its path, mostly to the rear residence. So now we're capturing all of the surface, all the new surface. The amount of potential runoff to the adjacent sites is, almost none. It's only the grass area on the perimeter. So most of the area is now being directed, to the storm sewer and collected rather than discharging to the neighbors like it does now.
And then a follow-up maybe is, if the existing parking lot has to be rebuilt, then it would have to meet stormwater standards?
Once the site triggers the 20,000 square feet, it would have to come into basically a redevelopment standard where they would need to treat for water quality elements at that point in time. As a default, it will have some quantity control, but given the condition of the site, they would typically, unless they expanded by more than the 20,000 square feet of impervious, this type of site would typically not be required to have a water quantity control in place.
And maybe I didn't say that, if they have to replace the existing parking lot.
Correct.
Then would that trigger the 20 plus the?
No. Typically with if a previously developed site prior to the code, they would be required to do the water. They would have some quantity reduction simply because they would have to do a water quality treatment, which as a default has a quantity reduction. They would not be specifically have a quantity target that they would have to meet.
Thank you.
Other things, sir?
I guess with that, our intent that, assuming that in the future, if the parking lot gets reconstructed, there'd be some islands that would be created as biofilter spaces or something. It would reduce our overall parking count, but there are some opportunities to do treatment in the future if required, during the reconstruction. Because then we'd have curb gutter and all those other requirements would kick in as well, and as well as interior landscape islands, and we would use those as our treatment areas for quality control.
Other questions for the petitioner as long as he's up here? Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Seeing none, back to the commission.
Move approval with condition.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. David, you have something to add?
I'll vote in favor, but I think that this is something that we should look at as far as the stormwater ordinance, where I understand that you're in a developed area, that this is not a greenfield site, but there are some things that could be done, like impervious pavers or other. And what we're not doing is achieving what we're trying to do in the community, and that's somewhere between volumetric and treatment standards. And this is a site that we could do those, and probably shows a shortcoming in our existing stormwater ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions? All right, let's call a roll.
Hintz,
Aye.
Weigert,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Crop,
Aye.
Forsick,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
All right, our final item for the evening, number 7, conditional use permit and general development plan approval for a community living arrangement located at 3800 Jackson Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, this was just recently at a workshop of the last meeting for the Plan Commission, so you should be, somewhat familiar with the product. The applicant is seeking to a conditional use permit and a, general development plan for the construction of a community-based residential facility. Under the zoning ordinance, we only allow up to 16 occupants in community living arrangements without the need for a conditional use permit. This is looking at about 52 units, 1 story. Therefore, a conditional use permit is required for the use as well as in the plan developments. This is just a general development plan, so they're trying to get through the conceptual design of what they would like to do, and then they would follow up at a future meeting with that specific implementation plan. So that being said, we do have residential to the north and west of the proposed site. We have that commercial development to the south, and then a mixture of commercial to the east. Here's the aerial. That is currently a greenfield site. It does have an access drive that enters the site. These 3 commercial parcels all share an access drive that has 1 access point off to Jackson and 1 off to Snell to the south. The site does have a number of wetlands on it, so the applicant is trying to design kind of around those wetland constraints. And there you can see then the single-family homes to the west and to the north. So this is the conceptual site plan that the applicant has provided for the general development plan. Shows the generalized layout of the building, generalized idea of where stormwater management will be taken. Shows a parking lot as well as a secondary overflow parking lot to the south. Currently, the site is shown at about 62.5% green space, 37.5% impervious, so it would fall within the requirements. They're looking at just under a 38,000 square foot building. It does have about 24 parking spaces shown along the primary entrance of the building. One thing that the applicant would like to request a base standard modification for some additional overflow parking to the south. Applicant has noticed that with this type of use, the day-to-day 24 spaces is perfectly acceptable for the kind of everyday use of the property, but they do find these uses tend to have a high peak traffic count where you may be getting a lot of visitors for some of the individuals that are living there. So they would like to have that overflow parking to help alleviate some of those peak periods that they have. They said, you know, it's generally a pretty quick turnover, but those peak periods do occur where you have a lot of visitors coming in. So just to help alleviate any possible parking concerns. Staff is in support of it. And on a day-to-day basis, that parking won't be needed, but we don't want to create an issue where you do have a peak visitor rate, that we're forcing this traffic onto the access road or some other area. Conceptual store management's only been provided. They're still working through the process of formalizing those plans. When they come back for a specific implementation plan, they will have to provide a lot more detail on those stormwater management plans. But the site is a little bit of a challenge because it does have some of those wetland features that they have to work around. Conceptual landscaping plan has been provided. It includes a variety of trees and shrubs. You know, right now they're just identifying that they understand they do have some buffer yard requirements that they need to address. They haven't finalized what those will be, as well as, you know, a mixture of parking and perimeter trees. Again, when they come back for their specific implementation plan, they will have to take that to the next level and meet our code requirements for paving, streets, buffer yards. Here are some proposed building elevations. These are similar to what we saw at the workshop. A variation of materials that are on these buildings. They do meet our multifamily design requirements. They're a mixture of stone and kind of this wood fiber siding. The applicant did bring a material board to kind of discuss with you and show you what some of those materials could look like. Staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit and the general development plan. They've also included some generalized sign renderings that do meet code for that area. So staff recommends approval with the base standard modification to allow up to 40 spaces. That's the 24 spaces required by code and those 16 overflow parking spaces.
All right, thank you, sir. Technical questions, David?
Can you just go back, just so I understand where the overflow parking is?
Yep.
Is that to the south?
It is to the south. It's right here.
Would, as a trade-off for that, would you ask for additional landscaping in there?
We'll probably look to screen that.
Other technical questions? Go ahead, Thomas.
What is the proposed funding for each bed, public, private? What's the look in terms of how much public, how much private?
It'll be a mix, though.
Well, right, but it could be 85-15.
In a perfect world, it'd be 100% private pay. But
Right.
That's not what the market study says. I don't have it with me. But,
Hold on, Mr. Ganth, if we could wait till
Yeah.
the
We'll
director
have
of the
them
city
come up
staff.
and-
Yeah. Other technical questions? Okay, seeing none? Anybody want to step up from the public and talk to this?
Yeah.
Step up to the mic, please.
Ben Ganther, Ganther Construction, Oshkosh. Just to repeat the answer, the pro forma contemplates absolutely taking a decent amount of CMO residents. And so it'll be a mix of both public and private pay. And David, your point about the screening, come on, it's a used car lot. I mean, odds are we'll do some screening over there, but I think they should be doing some screening.
The used car lot's no longer in operation, so we're looking at long term.
Well, what do you think it's going to be? It's we looked at buying the property, but it's too expensive, and what are you going to do with the building?
Any questions for Mr. Ganther as long as he's up here? Anything else? Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Come on up, sir.
My name is Barry Weeson. We have the largest lot adjacent to the proposed site.
What's your address?
3836 Purple Crest Drive. And we always have a water problem on our southeast corner every time it rains. And we're thinking that it comes from drainage off of that proposed site. And our main thought was, will that change after this all gets in and it'll drain away from our lots? Is that?
Yeah, there's a, if I can go back to the wetland map. There's a large wetland area up there.
Right.
You can see. So as they do the construction of this property, they'll have to meet city requirements for all of the water staying on their site. Okay. Will no longer be able to pour off the property lines. So one of the challenges they have in this project is still finalizing that stormwater management plan of how they're going to achieve that.
And a new word that came into my mind here is buffer yard landscaping. What does that?
So when we have institutional uses or commercial uses such as this development adjacent to a residential use such as yourself, our code kicks in requirements of fencing and landscaping to help buffer them from you.
Okay.
So they haven't provided their exact detail of how they will achieve our code requirement, but they will be required to do a combination of fencing and landscaping along that property line.
Another thought about air conditioning. The units, are they going to hum like crazy and the people along that line aren't going to be able to sit out in the summertime? Or
I would have to kind of defer to the builder if they have finalized their, HVAC and cooling plans at this time.
All I got.
Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else here to speak to this item today?
Ken Kozakowski, architect with Ganther Construction Architecture. Regarding the HVAC, we haven't worked out the mechanicals yet, but typically there will be some condensing units that don't run really loud. Obviously, with a commercial kitchen, there'll be a fan there, so there'll be some humming, but I don't think it's anything like an industrial level that you would hear that would prevent you from enjoying your backyard. But we'll be looking at how that works out. We haven't designed that yet. We did bring some samples along. Primary materials would be a manufactured stone similar to this product, and as a composite wood siding in these natural color tones. So that's basically the building colors you see in the elevations. Regarding the parking, as Mark stated, zoning code accounts for staff parking, but doesn't really talk much about visitor parking, so 40 stalls would be an adequate use for this site. More than the 24 would be a little bit light. Otherwise, any questions further questions?
Any questions for the architect?
I guess not.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else in the public here to speak to the item today? Seeing none, back to the commission.
Make approval with conditions.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Hintz,
Aye.
Taggart,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Mott,
Aye.
Prop,
Aye.
Forsick,
Aye.
Bowen,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
All right, we have a workshop. Anything else to add before we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Meeting over,
I like how you
workshop
always look at
begins.
me right before that.